listen to the best and emulate the best and be ready for tears and be ready for a little bit of pain. If you're not ready for that, don't do it.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Sonically podcast where music creators educate music creators. I'm Elmo. In today's episode, we're honored to welcome the legendary Gino Vannelli. With a career spanning 5 decades and 21 albums, Gino has captivated fans worldwide with his soulful voice and genre-blending music from timeless hits like I Just Wanna Stop and People Gotta Move. Now, Gino is releasing his most personal project yet, The Life I Got to My Most Beloved, which comes out February 7th. Dedicated to his late wife Patricia, the album reflects on love, loss, and resilience with a powerful lead single, Keep On Walking, already touching hearts around the world. Today we'll dive into Gino's incredible journey, the inspiration behind his new album, and what continues to fuel his passion for music. So without further ado, let's welcome Gino Vannelli to the show. Hey, Gino. How you doing?
Good to be here.
We are so thankful to have you on the show today because as a fellow Canadian, I am well aware of your legendary status as a creator. And if it's possible, could we rewind the clock back to the beginning of the journey? Did you grow up with music in your life?
Yes, my father started off as a singer. And so, we always had the best records around in the house. And even at a young age of 5 and 6 and 7, I knew all the jazz greats and had fair knowledge of the opera singers and some of the operas created. So by the time I was 9 or 10, I was already taking drum lessons. And by the time I got to 11, I was playing in clubs. And so it was really an early start.
In the household, was it encouraged to pursue this path?
Well, the real encouragement is not when nothing has to be said, when it's just there all the time. My dad would come home with a new record, and when someone's by the time someone plays a record 6 times through, you don't ask, do you like this record? So there was music on, every hour on the hour we had something playing. If it wasn't the radio that was on, there was the new stereo that my father bought in 1960-61 when Stereophonic just came out at the time. And then he bought some of the great jazz records and some of the, I remember when Four Phase came out and some of the big orchestras started having new type of recordings with new stereophonic sounds, so on and so forth. So my father was one of the first guys in Montreal, to really explore that. And of course he loved opera and big bands. So I was pretty well educated, in all that at a young age. But it didn't have to be encouraged. It was like it was supper time or music time.
At what point did you feel as though you could create music on your own?
Well, it's as organic as a seed becomes a flower or a tree. So in the beginning, you have to water the seed, and for me, all the listening was like watering the seed. And then by the time maybe 3, 4, 5 years later, I was ready to play a little bit. And maybe a couple of years after that, I took up piano and guitar and bass and all the rhythm section instruments. And by the time I got to 14, it was a natural process of me wanting to do my own, create my own. And I looked at everything that I had done or listened to so far as nothing more than food and water, for the plant to grow. And my appreciation for it still remains very, very great till today. But I knew that I also didn't want to, be a quote unquote jazz artist or be a quote unquote classical singer or classical artist or composer or anything like that. I wanted to combine it all. And although the saying goes that you can't serve 2 masters at once, you can certainly learn from many, many masters and try to amalgamate everything into one form. And of course, indeed, some of my best favorite composers are people that did fuse many influences into one form. And I suppose everybody does, knowingly or not. But I really wanted to become a contemporary music writer. I have my own voice and draw from classical jazz, Latin, soul, and all these elements that I thought were so good. Soul was always so very interesting with the new rhythms, James Brown's new drummers and some of the old artists that King Curtis and all that. These new kind of funk drummers, and this was way before people were employing it in pop music. This was like the 1959, 1960, live at the Apollo and things like that. My friends used to come over with this new Apollo record and with various artists at the Apollo, and I'd listen to those drummers doing all this hi-hat work, this syncopation and stuff. And that really, really was something, a really different take from the British invasion stuff, which was a bit straight ahead. And of course, when my father would be home, he'd play some classical singer, and I'd listen to those singers start to sing up there, and G, A, B flat, and up to a high C. I go, how do they do that? And it's not only just a gift of having the voice; it's there's a skill to it of knowing how to treat your voice, where to place your wind, your diaphragm, things of that sort. And so you listen enough, and you try, and you know how far you are from the goal. Um, and of course, I loved being a drummer, so I was lucky enough to meet Gene Krupa, to see Buddy Rich play live. My favorite big band drummers like Sam Woodyard, my favorite combo drummers like Joe Morello, and then of course Elvin Jones and um, Tony Williams and all those guys. Were a great influence on me, and I was very interested as a drummer to play forcefully, but to play with finesse and to play integrated rhythms and things like that. So I brought that influence over to my records. But I also was very much in love with harmony and polyharmony. So I tried to bring that element of French Impressionism to my music. And of course, I was a bit of a buff, starting off with the Lake poets and then with the more modern poets, and wanted to integrate some of those that kind of language into the songs. And it took a while to really educate myself on how to place poetry into music. And it's very difficult in the beginning because they seem to be such disparate influences. And then finally, with time, especially I think with the third album, Storm at Sunup in 1975, I started making headway with integrating more sophisticated lyrics with sophisticated music, and then went on from there with just the Gemini and with Pauper in Paradise. I actually employed a symphony orchestra, the Royal Philharmonic, to do some recording. So it's really a process of looking at an influence and saying, I want that from that. I think I can use this to put in this lane right here.
I was also curious about kind of zooming out in scope in terms of, because like there's a lot of people trying to pursue this path of creating music as a profession without really understanding what comes along with it personally, what comes along with success.
Well, first of all, Elmo, if you think about success all the time, it's no less than a racer, a marathon racer, always looking to his side. If he looks to his side, he'll fall. He'll screw up and not win the race or not even come in good standing. So I would suggest to those aspiring out there, think about success in your off hours. But when you're really seriously doing your homework and you're studying and you're rehearsing and you're practicing and all that, it's really thinking about being the best you can be and modeling yourself after the best.
Mm-hmm.
When you model yourself after at least who you think are the best, you at least have a watermark. It's kind of like the 4 minute mile was never done until someone did it, right? So if you start listening to some great drummers or some great guitar players, and you want to be you're an aspiring guitar player, listen to the best. There's like 5 or 10 of the best that ever existed, and listen to them and try to emulate them. At one point, if you're a true artist, you'll say, well, that was great. He did it that way, but I think I'm going to do it this way. But at least you have that basic knowledge. So I would say to you that thinking about success is not that important. And if you should do it, you do it in your off hours. And when you're at the piano or whatever instrument you're on, it is the expression of trying to bring out the best sound, the best message, communicate the closest feeling to what you have inside, so that when you hit those notes, play those chords, sing that song, something inside of you says, that's it. That's the mirror. That's what it should look like. That's what it should sound like.
Was that the approach that you took with
Yes.
I Just Want to Stop?
No,
Um,
that was a little bit different because that was a bit of a sidetrack in the sense that I had a career where I was selling out all the 4,000, 5,000 seaters in the 70s, and I was quite happy with that because I had developed my own audience from powerful people, Storm and Sun Up, and Just a Gemini, and Popper in Paradise. I considered myself to be pretty successful, but the reason why I thought I was successful is because I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And when people would say, well, maybe you think about having a hit single, I say, they could be good, but it has its drawbacks because once you have that hit single, people are going to expect you to do that all the time, and you're going to develop a lifestyle and a career according to that single, and then you become a satellite of that single and what it should bring after that. And so I resisted until Ross came to my house in '77, I think, and he played in its raw form. I Just Want to Stop. I said, yeah, I guess we need to record that song, and of course it became a very very big hit, and so I felt the responsibility of having to do it again, and we got pretty close to it as far as singles. It was a top five single, Living Inside Myself, and then we had some others that did pretty good on the world stage, like Black Cars and Wild Horses and a few others. But it wasn't long after I Just Want to Stop. Maybe it was like 6 to 8 years after that where I just said, no, I was correct. I don't want to pursue this. I want to pursue a musical career, and those who are willing to come, let them come. If they don't want to come, then don't come. So that's one thing to think that way, to say that, but it's another thing you have to walk that talk so that you keep your expenses to where your living expenses are commensurate to what your dreams are, because you might have to go through some starvation periods, to get done what you want to get done. So you make sure, and that's the temptation a lot of artists go through. You have a big single, you get paid a lot of money and all that, and then you start living according to that, and then you find that you have to just pay those things. So you're doing the things you don't want to do. And so that's one of the reasons why I left LA and so on and so forth. But the great thing for me is that when I decided that I wasn't going to pursue a pop career, quote unquote, at least pop as people knew it in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, I pursued the music I wanted to do, and I got to work with some great people. I got to work with big orchestras. I learned how to orchestrate myself. I worked with symphony orchestras. I sang for the Pope. I did this. So I really broadened my horizons. If you're willing to stick with it, this is the spiritual aspect of it. If you're willing to stick with it and give your heart to it, and it's the correct thing for you to be doing, it just seems like the universe opens doors for you. Now, there's a period of time of entropy, or, you're sort of stuck, inertia. Because you have a trajectory, you know where you're going, you sort of catch a wind, and that wind just takes you there. And then you find your gliding places that you always wanted to go. And you're always tempted, though, to do things that will inauthenticate yourself. But they're alluring. They're a lot of money, working with people that are cool, but you know in your heart it's the wrong thing to do.
how do you overcome fear and self-doubt?
Well, that's a river everybody's got to cross, and everybody crosses in their own way. Some people do it in a spiritual or religious fashion, and they hang on to something, and that thing kind of gets them through, and they come to new realizations. I did it partially through faith, but more through seeking and trying to understand. So I went through a period of time in the 80s where I went back to college. I studied literature all over again, studied the humanities, um, and then I studied theology. I studied the major religions of the world. And so I had to understand them from an exoteric point of view first, really, really understand the academia. of the Vedanta and Upanishads and the sutras and Jainism and all those Shintoism, Buddhism, so on and so forth. And so once you understand the academia of it, the bylaws, the rules, then you can get into the esoteric aspect of it. And then the esoteric aspect of it calls for involvement. You see, there's people don't realize this. The academic part of, say, religion or mystic studies, the academic part keeps you a nice safe distance. It's like studying about ice cream or studying about, let's say, the extrasensory deprivation tank. It does this, it does that. People that stay for 2 weeks, they can stay for that, all kinds of data on it. Now, throw the data away, get in the tank, and stay there for weeks on end. What happens? It's a whole different. One is outside looking in, and one is inside looking all over the inside and out.
Mm.
And so for me, the study of mystic religion created a little bit of an astonishment and a troubled mind at first, because everything goes against the grain from your little boy thoughts and your little boy cultural training, which is, I don't poo-poo it, but when you want to leave it, you'll be a little off your center for a while. But once you find the new center, you go, oh, I get it now. And this is, then the next trip is to live by it and to see that new training in everything you're doing within your life. So when bad things happen or challenges happen or a crosswind or a headwind, you take a step back and you think of all of the what you've learned, what you've been taught, and what you've learned and been taught is information that people have gone through in similar situations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's kind of precious. So when you study exoteric or academic religion, all you know is, say, Jesus Christ is my savior and all that. And so you hang on to an image, and that might get you through. But what happens when the challenge is so devastating? When there's death involved, when there's sickness involved, when there's impoverishment involved, when there's, in some cases, some people I knew, jail time involved. I mean, it's beyond just being troubled. That's when you have to pull a rabbit out of your hat, and that rabbit exists. It goes very deep. So that's when the mystic training really, really helps to know basically that I'm part of this thing called the universe. Some people call it God, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's a mastermind that just travels, that has sinews and neurons all over the universe. And just to backtrack a second, the religious studies just evolved into studying science, but the new science, like as of late, in the last 5 years, Robert Temple's book, The New Science of Heaven, uh, Nassim Haramein, the astrophysicist, all his new equations and stuff, and how he's discovered God through astrophysics. Hugh Ross and people like that, and that really is an interesting part, even for musicians, because the musician is going to come across stumbling blocks where he can't or she can't get past this, and to know these deep spiritual laws, how the involvement of your spirit, meaning your desire, your energy, how your involvement will bring about change. If you're patient enough, and if you have enough faith, and if you have the open heart to get the right information and ask.
Mm.
Don't be afraid to ask. Remember, seek and you shall find.
Mm.
So
Ask and you shall receive.
exactly. And those are very important aspects for the new creators. They need to develop that because they'll quit. They'll want to quit at one point. But if you're really serious about it, and it's almost as if you're telling the invisible energy of the universe, I want to do this, it will kind of hit it like a ping, a sonar ping, and something will come back to you eventually.
I wanted to also talk in the subject of faith. Your forthcoming album, The Life I Got to My Most Beloved, which is dedicated to your late wife, Patricia. I'm wondering if you could kind of go into the lyrics a little bit, because there are a lot of lines that I saw that remind me some of the feelings that I've had when certain tragedies happened in my life. And so those words really touched me. And I'm just wondering, can you walk me through how these lyrics transpired in making the album?
Well, my wife was very sick for almost 5 years, and I became her caregiver. And I could not do anything but write about at least 90% of the songs are dedicated to her and how courageous she was. And courageous because she never complained, and she always never wanted to put me out. Um, and I was with Patricia for almost 50 years. We were kids when we met, and it was very difficult. But I wanted to finish the record, and it took me a little longer than I wanted to, just because. I built the studio here because Tricia needed me hourly in the last year, and so I could work and then tend to her almost hourly. And I had a lot of those thoughts, and I knew I would lose her, and I was trying to keep her, doing everything I could, to keep her alive. And but when she went, it was almost prophetic in the sense that she went right after the album was done, and so I was very careful about what I was going to say on the record. It was not just song for songs. The lyrics really truly reflected my feelings, and they are not hopeless. They are very sorrowful in many ways, but they are full of hope in the sense that I do trust God. I do trust the universe knows what it's doing. I mean, I see it every day. I know something in the way of 14 billion people have lived and died so far on the planet, and I believe like there's 4 or 5 people dying per second, and another 4 or 5 people being born per second, or the ratios are changing, but something like that. So we can't even see it. How many people are being born and dying as we're speaking? Just in the last half an hour, we've been speaking countless, and it's so quick that it's like a rapid revolving door. Um, and yet we're here, almost 8 billion of us. So something knows better than we know. So at one point, what I'm trying to say, Elmo, is that with Patricia, with me, I had to let her go into what my knowledge or what my circumscribed knowledge is of what God is. Because none of us really know completely. It is a mystery. But I had to let her go and trust in the process. And maybe in time to come, we'll understand this process more with scientific discovery. As Robert Temple's book in New Science of Heaven is talking now about, biophotons and plasmic energy and all that, and it's quite an intriguing book. But until our better understanding, the only thing we have is it's been done before. Many people have gone. No one lives forever. I'm right behind you, and I that's what got me through. That I don't have to live a full life without her, and that I lived a great portion of my life with her, and it was so rich and so gratifying, so great, that I had that gift. And that what's left for me is I have stories to tell. I've got 7 books that are going to be coming out, part of a 7-book series, another couple of albums in me, a 10-part miniseries that I'm right now speaking to some people about, that are going to really keep me busy for the next however long I keep breathing.
Mm.
But to sum it up, really, it is there's there's only one last door, and that last door is either you think there's no door, if you're a nihilist, or if you're a complete atheist, if you're way beyond agnosticism and you're dead certain there's nothing, which you're a fool if you're dead certain of anything, because you can't be certain because you haven't seen it. You haven't seen it at all. But let's just say, for argument's sake, you feel dead certain. But truly, for the one who's seen the fact that even though I don't see the wind, I see the branches move, therefore I know the wind is blowing. I don't see God, but I see life all around me, and I wonder what that thing is. And I come to God by deductive reasoning,
Mm.
almost Aristotelian-like. Or I could very well come to that resolution by believing in Jesus Christ,
Mm.
and that would do it too.
Mm.
So for me, it's been a bit of everything. But to get to my point, it really is the last door, and the last door is the mind of the universe,
Mm.
how the universe works, how it creates, destroys, and keeps creating, and what survives. And the question was, what is the soul? And is the soul scientific? Is it made of something, or is it just imagination? And is imagination actually an energy that actually has a scientific counterpart? It goes very, very deep. And this is a lot of the mystic training, that you do when you study the Kabbalah and mystic Buddhism, and so on and so forth. Um, but again, for me, it was, I threw the door open and I said, I mean, she's gone anyways, but it was for me to carry on in a sane way. The moment I said, she's really yours, it's just, there's nothing anymore I can do. I've done all I can on my side, being her advocate and so on and so forth. And that was the only way to any kind of healing for me, because without it, the pain was just too great.
Mm. I wanted to ask you about a couple songs specifically.
Yes.
Come to Jesus Moment,
Yeah.
I found to be very fascinating because the way that you describe the process of healing and the the fact that there's so much we don't know, but then this song particularly tells me that you have these moments of reflection and exploration that draw you to some sort of a conclusion. And the lyric reads, I had a come to Jesus moment in the mountains of Peru, face to face with a fiery angel that yanked me out of my shoes. Could you go into explaining sort of like the journey behind this particular work?
Well, it was a real experience. I spent a couple of weeks in Peru, and I had such a revelatory experience that it would take 10 shows to talk about it. But it was a real experience, and the reason why I call it "Come to Jesus" moment, it's not that I saw Jesus or anything like that, but I had such a moment that I saw the essence of what Jesus was. It's not that I really wanted to see a man with a beard and that I wouldn't recognize him as being Jesus even if I saw him. But it's, what is the energy, what is the soul behind Jesus? And I was touched by it. And so the reason why I call it "Come to Jesus" is because I came home from Peru. The first thing I told Patricia, I had a come to Jesus moment. And she says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it's not that I saw Jesus, but I'm telling you that it's leading me to the understanding what he's trying to say, what he's trying to impart to us. That store your treasures in heaven and all those things, and that I am the portal and I am the way, I am the truth, I'm the life." It's actually scientifically true. I was trying to tell her that it's not that just he says these words and follow me and I'll show you the way. No, no, no. There's something very, very deeply, deeply scientific about those things that are very romantic and very religious. And that I won't go into the weeds of that, but that's why I call it as such, because those are the words I iterated to Tricia.
I also wanted to ask you about the song Across the Dark Night.
Hmm.
In our conversation, we touched upon fear and self doubt. And I get a sense that this song is a combination between sort of like a prayer and plea.
It is. It is.
At what point did this come out of you in terms of like, was it near the time Patricia was getting close and sort of these feelings sort of took hold of you?
It was when you want to change and you want to see the absolute truth. That old saying that, well, maybe you're not ready for the truth. And at one point, I was shown enough of the truth, whereas I was actually scared out of my mind of the truth because it was too much to handle. And in that prayer, I'm asking God that I will be helped to handle the truth, and that I could make that transition. And that when I say I really mean me, my wife, those I love, and everybody that I could think of on this planet. It's very difficult being human. It's very difficult being a young boy, young girl, growing up, having your problems, and you get older and you get sick, and then you have to see your body die, or see your parents die, or see your brother die, your sister, your wife, your husband. It's a very, very, this is why Jesus very, very, very well put that every man's got to bear his cross. And it's asking God to help me bear my cross. It's asking God to help me make that transition so that I no longer fear um, the unknown, and I no longer fear God itself, himself, herself. There's no gender for God. Um, it is something so foreign to us if we get so enmeshed in our humanity. At one point, it's fine. But when you study Zen and you study parts of Buddhism, even in mystic Christianity, it's letting go the form of things, letting go even the when people think of Christ, right? They see a man with a beard and all that. Well, of course, on Earth, yes, energy takes form, and there it is. But do you think that Jesus or Christ is actually just a man? Impossible. It's way bigger, way more universal. Let's say more cosmic than that. So one would ask themselves, what is the body of Christ then? I mean, because they were talking about the Christos during the times of Aristotle and Plato, and that's where the word Christ comes from. It's really, it predates Christ. And you ask yourself, what is the Christ? And then you start to realize that it's much more than a man, and then something comes over you where you have to make that transition into a land of consciousness without a body. How do you do that? It really taxes our brains, because this is why Jesus asks us to store the treasures in heaven and to be perfect like your Father in heaven, all those kind of things, to take your mind off your form at least once in a while to help you make that transition. And I believe that once you learn better to accept at least that transition, it'll be easier for you and for those around you. And it would be a beautiful thing for humanity to accept that transition more elegantly and gracefully, and help us make the turn. And I would think grease the wheel of life, so that it's just no squeaks to it, and just no crying. It just is a wonderful experience. And some people have done it. I remember Tricia told me her grandfather, when she was a little girl, she went to the farm in Minnesota, and her grandfather was 80 something years old. He just kind of slammed the table a little gently and says, "Okay, I'm going to die." And he went upstairs and he died.
Mm.
And so we mustn't even laugh at that, but it's a, like the Native American would say, it's a good way to die. It's a beautiful death. And he was very grateful for his life, and it was time to go, and he just went to sleep, and make the transition. So yes, of course, I tend to be long-winded about this, but yes, Across the Dark Night likens it to the Saint John of the Cross, Dark Night of the Soul. That when you're making that transition um, into the more authentic reality of what the divine really is, it takes you a while, and this is the prayer to help me make that transition.
After experiencing this transition with somebody close to you and creating this album as a result of that, have you discovered a new truth for yourself?
No, there's nothing. Truth is as old as anyone could think of. It's truth is truth. I mean, the planets, the way the planets turn, gravity, the plasmic worlds, the way photons work, the way atoms work, the way atoms spin, protons, electrons, ions. This has been going on for billions of years. That is at least Newtonian truth, and we go deeper and deeper and deeper into quantum worlds. We're trying to understand how the quantum worlds, work. So those things we're just discovering. We're not inventing. So we as humans, are little shards, little pieces of light crystallized and calcified into bodies, and the light propels us like a battery, and it's up to us to create a feedback loop so that we can propel up and come down and look and improve, up, down, look and improve. When people talk about Darwinian stuff, atheists love to talk about that, but even Darwinian stuff, it really infers an incredible intelligence because animals cannot change or adapt without some hidden intelligence telling them longer legs are better or a shorter tail is better. And if there wasn't an intelligence, nothing would change. So there's even in that limited physical world, there is a great intelligence at work. There's a system, almost like an ecosystem working. And there are ecosystems that are larger and larger, galactic and then multi-galactic, then parallel universe, meta universes. And it's infinite. And so for us to understand that things are kind of a feedback system and that God looks at us and we look at God and there's this wonderful symbiosis. And this is what St. Paul meant about being co-laborers with God, that we must live our lives co-laboring with, that we take a step and then God takes the step and those things meet and we have a richer life for it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the hard-earned things that you have to try to integrate. And again, coming back to the musician, so when you have an idea about that, then you say, well, I'm just a lonely little person with a like a really really slim trajectory, saying I want to accomplish that. Well, that's important because it takes all kinds of multi weaves to make the tapestry, and you're one of the weaves, so it's important. And it's important for you to manifest those dreams. So what the good books and the wise books and the ageless wisdom tries to tell you is how to accomplish that. So faith is a very, very integral part of it. Patience, knowledge, um, a reverence. A reverence for other people and yourself will at least give you respect. So when you respect other people, you'll know how to treat other people, and you'll know how to be treated by other people. So that part of being, say, a people person is very, very important to the musician, to the writer. You don't live in a bubble. You live
Yeah.
with people and you collaborate and you so on and so forth. So all that spiritual training will help the aspiring artist because the artist is not paid by the hour. The artist is not paid so much per week. The artist wakes up unemployed
Mm.
and it always is finding a way to employ him or herself. And that spiritual training gives you the strength to do that.
You had mentioned intelligent design, intelligent creation. Um, you have these very powerful words that are attached to a sonic vision that you designed for this album. Can you talk about that vision that ended up being the sonic sort of shaping for the work?
Well, um, when I was very young, I heard Stan Kenton live and um, Duke Ellington and Count Basie and the Buddy Rich band, the Gene Krupa band, and they were in like 400, 600 seat clubs. And to hear some of those 18-piece orchestras in small places like that, you hear a sound that you'll never hear again when you hear 18 people playing in a 400 seat club, a brass section. You're so accosted by a sound that you can't forget that sound. And I remember I went to see, I wanted to buy a piano and I could not afford more than an upright, $200 for an upright. But there was a piano there, and it was a Steinway D, a 9 foot. And the man who was a musician selling it, he had a day gig. I said, I played on that. I said, oh my God, this thing just sounds like heaven. This is so great. He said, well, it's not so much that it's great, it's what a piano should sound like. And so the perfect sonic sound that I search for, it's not so much that I'm searching for something great. I'm just searching for what I think is homeostatic, what it should sound like.
Do you feel at the end of the process when you got your final master that what you set out to achieve with this record was achieved?
I can't tell you exactly that for another little while. I'm still a little close to it because after you work on it for a few years, you get awfully close to it. So all you have is like the inner measure of and maybe you're missing something. Maybe all of a sudden you mixed it and there's too much bottom or too little, or there's not enough guitar, or something weird like that. I don't think so. I think I paid enough attention, and I paid enough attention, or paid enough time, spent enough time away from it and going back, so that I had enough objectivism. Uh, but and then I played for other people too, and things like that. I wouldn't want to go back to it because in the last throes of mixing it, I I mean I don't want to sound maudlin, but I was in tears mixing it because the album is so real to me. Stormy River just came out today. In fact, the video came out today, and I could hardly mix that song because I knew Trisha had such little time left, and the song is dedicated to her, of course. And so I couldn't not go back. First, I still can't listen to it now. Maybe in a couple of years from now, I'll be able to listen to it because everything was written for and to Trisha. And if it's not exactly about her, it was actually to make her laugh. It's All Good Mama. I told it was written maybe a couple of years ago. I said, listen to this funny song. And she said, well, you sure you want to say that? And then she changed my mind about a few lyrics and all that. So she was so involved in my work, and so she was really a pillar that I could truly, truly trust and bounce stuff. And she would sometimes I'd ask her, "Do you think this is too forward, or this is?" She said, "No, go for it. You should say that." And she really was instrumental in helping me pick the right singer to sing Across the Dark Night. Now, I don't know if you've paid attention to Emily West's performance on it, but it's beautiful. She sang it just beautifully, and I'm very proud of her how she sang it. And our voices just really meshed beautifully together. But there were other singers who tried it first, and Patricia really, really helped me. She says, "Yeah, she's a really good singer, but she's a bit of a showboat, and that's not what the song is about, and things like that."
There's a phenomenon that I often hear from people that have lost somebody close with them is like shortly after they have this thing where um, they have this urge to call them on the phone, and then they realize that they're no longer here. Um, and whenever I have this conversation with people that tell a similar story, I often ask if you were able to have that last conversation with her and it was kind of like after all said and done with the album and all of these thoughts and feelings and reflections have gone out to the universe. What do you think she would say to you, and what do you think you'd say to her?
Well, Trisha really admired um, me a lot, and she was very instrumental in helping me keep to the straight and narrow, um, always reminding me to be true to myself um, when it was easy to forget, especially the early years. Uh, we had the kind of relationship where we can have the most serious talks about afterlife talks, um, talks about the most serious political aspects of life, what we're responsible for, or what people call a social contract. We would talk about abortions. We would talk about everything, and very deeply. And we always would come to a very, very uh, similar conclusion to everything. And so I suppose Trish and I would be talking about everything and anything, as we always did. But we really knew how to have fun together too, and be totally lighthearted, and forget about it all, and just you know go for a car ride and just talk to each other, or not even say. We were good with not saying a word either too, and we were one of those lucky couples that were attracted to each other physically, sexually, to right till the end. Of course, she got really sick and that changed, but. Um, So it's a very strange feeling to be so sorrowful and yet so grateful.
Amazing. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared in today's interview. As you know, this platform is for the aspiring songwriter and artists, and for those people who look up to you and aspire to do even maybe some of the things that you've accomplished in your career. What advice would you give them?
Well, I think we've covered it. But in summation, listen to the best and emulate the best, and be ready for tears and be ready for a little bit of pain. If you're not ready for that, don't do it. Don't do it.
Beautiful. I love that. Gino, we've made it. We've made it to the end of the interview. We made it to the last question. I have to say this is one of the most interesting interviews I've done thus far. We've touched on so many topics with music at the center, and I feel very grateful and blessed that we were able to share this time together. The final question of this interview is: what's next for Gino Vannelli? Anything you want to promote to the Sonically community?
Well, I have the first book will come out this year, and it's a series of 7 books that I've written, and it's a lot about the stories I've been telling you, and the weaving of the supernatural with the pragmatic. And the first book that will be coming out is called The Falconer, and it's finished, and we're speaking right now to publishers about it, and hopefully we'll get it out for this fall coming out. And then I intend to put one out every 6 months after that.
And any tours coming up?
Yes. Our first date is in Atlanta on March 20th, and I think March 22nd in Austin, Texas. And then we play New York and Boston in June, and a few other dates. I can't remember now. And then we go to South America in September, and then we play, I think, Chicago, Detroit, and a few other places in the fall. uh, I think Las Vegas and Los Angeles, beginning of November.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. We just encourage everybody to check out the new album, check you out on tour, look out for the new book. You got so much stuff going on. We're super excited about all that's
Appreciate it, man.
coming in the name of Gino Vannelli. And yeah, once again, we're rooting for you. We thank you. And I think so many people are going to get so much out of the conversation that we've had today.
Thank you, Elmo. Take care of yourself.
No problem. You too.
Bye bye.